some questions. And I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, and we'll get this started. Pat will be in a few minutes. Hey, Porter.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? You're pretty busy, huh?
I'm fine. Let's see. I have a brand new camera. I'm going to see how this looks.
You're good.
There we go. How's that?
You're
There
good.
we go. Okay. I haven't had this camera on this computer ever, so it's new. So how are you this evening?
Doing well. Doing well. I know you're a busy little bee.
This is my 5th one today. Oh, my God. I know. It hadn't always been this hectic, but I got onto this whole lawsuit thing about 3 weeks ago. Then 2 weeks ago, we formed the executive committee for the Lawyers for Ron Paul, and now I'm with the beautiful Tracy Diaz on Talking Liberty.
Thank you. I hate when people make me blush. It's never fun.
What I found out is, well, I won't say this. It would. What I've found out is women don't hear enough how beautiful they are, and I love to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get started. I'm going to ask you some basic questions in case people in the room aren't exactly sure what this is all about, and then we'll get into some more detailed stuff as we move along. So,
okay? Is the sound on this camera okay?
You're a little low. If you can make it a little louder, that'd be good.
Well, I just have to figure out how to moderate it. I'm not. Oh, I wonder. This won't do the mic. I know there's a mic control somewhere. I've been doing computers so long that I don't understand anything anymore. I'll try to just not talk so loud. How's that? Is that better?
That's fine. That's good. Everyone in the room saying you're good, so you're good.
Just raise your hand and go like this if I'm a little bit too loud, okay?
Got it.
I found out lately I'm getting very emotional when I talk about this because I think that people don't realize the seriousness of the situation we're in right now. They really don't. I don't think. Last night we had our conference call. You were on that, weren't you, Tracy?
Yeah, for a little bit.
With Richard Gilbert. When he started out, instead of talking about the lawsuit, he was talking about the very real fact that they're in the completion stages of a number of FEMA concentration camps all over the country, and that we've passed these new executive orders and the NDAA, and that and when Richard said this, I was sort of hit like in the head. I thought, really? He said, when these concentration camps are finished, it's over, because then they can just start picking up whoever they want to. And you know, we already saw the YouTube video of the NATO Special Operations Forces in Tampa last month. And I mean, I was thinking about that last night. They were threatening us. They were using a hostage situation with the mayor of Tampa, but it was all related to the Republican National Convention. So what's this about, where they're using special operations forces where the Republican National Convention is going to be?
I know. I saw that. I saw all of that actually, and they were doing like the training exercises, and everyone was out watching, and they're like, "Yay! Look at those planes! Look at this!" I'm like, guys.
Rockwell put out that thing 6 or 8 weeks ago. Remember, he said what to expect if you're a delegate in Tampa, and it didn't sound pretty. I was a delegate in 2008. I was a Ron Paul delegate, although we were pledged to McCain. We didn't know enough. We didn't know nearly what we know right now, but it was like there were 3 layers of visible security inside the convention center. It was like operating in a high security prison. Now, if you're just dyed in the wool, you probably wouldn't have even noticed it, but we had people continually watching all of the Ron Paul people. One time when we made a sudden move and I got off the phone with somebody and told someone else they were spreading the rumor, come over to Section D, we're negotiating to get Ron Paul to speak tonight. And I don't know where that came from, but when I grabbed another person, went over there to find out about it, looked around, and here's these 2 6'2" guys in dark suits right behind us, said, "Where are you all going?" Yeah. And I said, "Oh, we hear they're negotiating Ron Paul on the floor tonight." They said, "That ain't going to happen." So, I mean, there's no freedom of speech. Get this, Tracy, at a Republican National Convention where we're supposed to be seriously deliberating to get the very best person we can to be President of the United States in this time of dire need. We're in the middle of a huge depression. We have, I can't remember how many wars, how many countries we're killing people in as a matter of policy now. What, 6, 7, 8 that we know of, not to mention all the assassinations. And there's no freedom of speech. You cannot even pull out your own sign if you're there and say, "I love Mitt." you certainly couldn't say I love Ron Paul or I love freedom, because a delegate with me, we were sitting up in the stands the last night. She did that. Within a minute, we had 2 security people over. They cleared out 3 rows, made everybody stand up and get out, and they searched us till they found the sign. So who knows what they're planning this time. So once we get this lawsuit going a little bit farther, I want to start changing the focus of attention on why can't we have free speech at a political convention.
I agree. I don't think anyone in here will disagree with you on that stuff. Explain quickly for us what exactly this lawsuit intends to, what the point is. What does it intend to accomplish? We'll put it that way. I'm
sorry, say that again, please. I've started looking at your questions there. I can't multitask. Say that again.
Don't worry about that. I'll ask you those questions from down there. There's a lot of them, so I'll filter through that. I've become quite skilled.
Oh, go ahead.
I was asking, what's the purpose of the lawsuit? What exactly does it intend to accomplish?
The lawsuit's actually very simple, and if you can listen to the MP3s on that whole call last night, people will find it very instructive. I learned a lot on it. But this comes down very simply to a question. We're asking Judge Carter a question. It says, Judge Carter, what prevails as the highest legal authority in presidential elections? Federal law or state law and or Republican Party rules? What's higher? Federal law that clearly states that candidates have a right to, that delegates have a right to vote for the candidate of their own conscience without being threatened, coerced, or intimidated, or a hodgepodge series of state and Republican rules to try to wrap people up so that they have to vote against their conscience. So, Judge, what should it be? Should we obey the federal law or the state laws and Republican Party rules? And it's very clear if you look at the law in the section of the law that's in that lawsuit that the federal law, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party and any other party for that matter comes under federal election jurisdiction once they engage in activities to elect a president. Okay? So it doesn't matter if they're a private club, federal rules supersede everything, and they say we have a right to, as delegates, to vote for our conscience. So that's what we're asking for, and if the judge rules rightly and says, well, of course federal law does, this is one of those areas that we can all agree that federal law should prevail because this is a federal election for the president, right? You know, state laws shouldn't rule a presidential election. And so if he rules like we think he's going to, then what happens is we're also asking in the lawsuit that when we prevail that each delegate be served a written copy of the judge's order, and what we're asking for is our only remedy is to have all of the delegates unbound because of the rampant, gross, egregious election fraud that's taken place from day one in this campaign. And the GOP's been a big actor in it. There have been other actors like the mainstream media, but we're not suing them yet.
Okay, so I guess my next question follows from that is, I mean, it was my understanding that there had already been that determination that all delegates were unbound when they got to the floor.
You have Rule 38, but that's a Republican rule, and that should prevail also, but in practicality, because there's such a tight lockdown of security at the convention, they're not going to allow that to happen. For instance, let me tell you how it worked last time, and that was different. I've been a delegate twice. I was there when George Bush I was crowned in 1988 in New Orleans, and there was, I don't remember security being an issue then. It was very free and casual, but very scripted also. But in 2008, what happened when it was time to vote is they asked everybody, I think it was a paper ballot or something like that, and we had to give it to the convention chairman, and they would make or the delegation chairman, and they would make the announcement. Well, Senator Inhofe, Jim Inhofe, was up for Senate that time, I think, so they let him, he was up for re-election, so they let him give the announcement. Now, we had one delegate who had been bound to another candidate, and so he was free to vote on the first round for the candidate of his choice, and he turned in Ron Paul. And so when Jim Inhofe announced it publicly to the whole convention, he said Oklahoma unanimously gave all 48 of our votes to John McCain. And Robert Demarest, who was the candidate, was so incensed. We had a big meeting afterwards with the state chairman, but Robert was so incensed, he quit the Republican Party, and I haven't seen him active in politics since then. So it's very clear that just that activity that violated his rights by misrepresenting fraudulently and knowingly the election result of the whole convention and to the whole country, since it was on TV, that disenfranchised him so much that he's now feeling totally out of the system. And that's not right. So we want remedy from that.
Am I wrong to say that this time around our numbers are a lot greater and the chances of those things happening are a lot less because of our numbers?
I think having more numbers will have them change their tactics. Their goal is always going to be the same, to suppress any kind of freedom of speech. Like Ron Paul will not get a speaking spot on that podium, even though we might have 400, 500, 600 people there that are for Ron Paul. Who knows how many will be for Ron Paul in their hearts by the time that convention comes in 2 months. There's a lot of world economy to collapse, U.S. economy to collapse, new wars to wage. There's all kinds of things that can happen in the meantime. All kinds of things can be exposed about Romney and Obama. Who knows what this Obamacare thing's going to do. So I think the country's going to be very restless, and I think we're probably also going to be seeing riots that are happening. I mean, the Obama administration did do a lot of race baiting with the Trayvon Martin thing, not to put some money in their piggy bank to use at the appropriate time. It will help them, I'm sure, to have riots, and of course we have so much unemployment and discouragement. This is what the establishment wants. They want to have a reason to impose martial law on us. So if they have a false flag event to bring us into war with Syria or Iran, that would certainly trigger those kinds of things. I mean, this is a dangerous time we're in, and I'm getting more and more tuned in, because even I, as tuned in as I think I am, I'm not immune to the normalcy bias. Because when I went to Schlotsky's today for lunch, and everything looked normal outside. They were putting 2 more lanes in on the interstate highway I drove on, and people are going about their business, and I'm on total red alert. And so just to survive, you have to have some normalcy bias. But when those camps get finished and they have them staffed, we'd be naive to think they're not going to start using them. And first it'll be unpopular people probably, or it may be one fell swoop. I mean, what happens if they have a false flag event and set off a nuke in the city of their choice to traumatize the country like they did on 9/11? Look what happened after 9/11. That changed everything. We lost our civil rights. We've been in endless wars since then, hot wars. Soldiers are committing suicide at a higher rate than they're being killed in action. I mean, this is nuts what's going on. And so, the next step for them would be to escalate the oppression on us. I mean, they don't like that we're having this chat right now. I mean, they can't like having this.
And that leads me to my next point. I have a bunch of points to make, but the next point is, what makes you think that, not that you shouldn't try, but what makes you think that bringing this lawsuit to the corrupt system that we're in right now anyway is going to make any bit of a difference?
Well, there's no guarantee, Tracy. There's no guarantee. I often liken we're in a movement right now. We're in a historical liberation movement in the United States that hasn't been seen since 1775, 1776. We all feel we're part of something bigger than we are. All these seeds that have been planted for a long time, and Ron Paul's played a big part in that, at least bringing the seeds out of the ground. But for this liberty message, this libertarian message, these seeds are starting to come to fruition. And we've heard the statement by Victor Hugo and Ron Paul said it, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And our time has come right now, okay? So, but there are no guarantees. But what we need to do is see, like a football coach, you hear them interviewed after the first half, and they say, well, how'd it go, coach? Well, we took what they gave us, and we responded to what was going on. That's all we can do right now. What I see right now is that this lawsuit is the tip of the spear for the liberty movement for what's happening between now and Tampa. And what else is happening in the liberty movement? We're talking to each other. We're arguing with each other. There's a lot of, in Oklahoma, where we had this glorious parking lot convention after the May 12th state convention, 7 or 8 weeks later, we're squabbling with each other like dogs and cats, like brothers and sisters. It's crazy, but we've lost our overarching purpose. Well, the lawsuit is a very strong purpose, and as we begin to get more plaintiffs, we're taking the outline of this spear. Imagine, I say the tip of the spear, okay? I'm looking in my camera here. Here's the tip of the spear. Well, as more and more people come in, this spearhead is gaining mass and more definition. And the more people we get into this plaintiff suit, say if we got to 1,000 plaintiffs, and we certainly have 1,000 people easily who have witnessed election fraud at either their county convention, their district convention, or their state convention, we have easily 1,000 people that have seen that and give a simple testimony and stand up, just like I am Spartacus or I am Ron Paul. They can stand up and say, by gosh, they committed fraud on us. I saw the way they cheated. They didn't obey their own rules, like in Oklahoma when we chose the executive committee, or when we had to vote on the big at-large slate. It clearly said in the rules of the convention we had to have a vote by ballot, but they had a voice vote followed by a standing vote, and there were guests standing in the back room that were probably Romney people. So what I'm saying is, this is a tool we have. I don't see any other tool right now, and if we had 3 tools, we ought to have the movement dividing up as called to pick up each tool. But I'm encountering a strange amount of apathy and suspicion, which seems to be also accompanied by a huge amount of what I'd call COINTELPRO or disinformation. I've seen things printed that I've then gotten, in the last 2 or 3 days that I've gotten more information from. One of them I talked with Richard Gilbert about on the conference call, and realizing how much disinformation they're aiming at us right now. So that's my view. There's no guarantee, but what do we have to lose? And we can gain in so many ways. Even if he rules against us, we can gain.
I have a bug on me, I'm sorry. I think, a lot of people and I've been reading and watching silently from the background and seeing all the stuff that's gone on. I know a number of my friends have been kicked out of the group. People that are voicing some sort of, anyone that seems to question or ask questions about what's going on and is persistent, because we're not, Ron Paul supporters and liberty lovers in general are very smart, very educated, and very on the ball. They don't typically speak about something unless they kind of have some idea what they're talking about. So a lot of what I've seen come up is jurisdiction. I know it's the Ninth Circuit Court in California, but what jurisdiction does that court have over the rest of the country? If the Ninth Circuit Court judge rules in favor, how is that enforceable throughout all 50 states? And then also, if that's the case, why even have a Supreme Court at all to make these sort of decisions? That's where I'm a little bit just confused.
Well, I'm not an attorney. I've studied business law and, this Constitution and things, but I'm not an attorney. But as I understand it, because I asked that same question because I've seen it a lot, and I asked the question, apparently when you enter the federal court system, you have to enter through one of the jurisdictions. But it is a federal court system. They have the jurisdictions in different areas by states, sort of like FEMA regions or something like that. But once you enter the federal system, it covers the federal system, and the federal system covers the entire nation. Okay? And I saw this, somebody posted an article, it's one of these flags for some kind of political consulting firm, and it was hitting a lot of the forums yesterday and the day before. And he was saying, they're going to pull the venue and take it to Massachusetts, and they don't have jurisdiction and all this stuff. Well, that's just not incorrect. That's not correct at all, because they do have jurisdiction, and even in the 9th District, I was talking with Richard on the call last night, and he said that we have in the 9th Circuit itself, we have already 25 defendants and 100 plaintiffs. So, we have 300 to 400 plaintiffs on there right now, and we're trying to get more plaintiffs all the time. So,
I called today. I called the clerk for the judge that's hearing the case. Left a couple messages. Didn't get a call back in time for this interview. But even if it was the appellate court, from my research that I've done, it still doesn't incorporate the entire country. Like, my problem is, then wouldn't a circuit court in New York be able to rule on something that then would take precedence over the whole entire country? It doesn't make sense to me as far as the way the court system works. That's the only real, I have an issue with that because I feel like, you know, if we're going in that direction, is there time enough to get it up to the level where it can affect the country?
You know, there's time, but think about it. They've just divided, it's a federal system, it's a whole, right? But I guess for whatever logistical purposes or whatever, they've set up these various districts where they have the judges. But as I understand it, a federal ruling applies across the federal system. So, it's, you know, it just does. And that's, but you can appeal those decisions and take them higher up. But right now, we have about 80% of the state parties served right now. And so that means we have about 10 left to get served. And once they're served, the last one served, the defendants have 21 days to make their response to it. And then it goes to the judge. And so we have about 8 weeks between now and the convention. So say we take another week to get those last states served. And then they have another 3 weeks, that's 4 weeks. Well, the judge could hear it in 5 or 6 weeks. He can make his decision on the eve of the convention if he wanted to. And this judge, Judge Carter, apparently, according to Richard, and he should know because he's been practicing for 32 years in the 9th District, is out of all the judges that they could have gotten on a random draw, this is the best judge we could have got because he's a no-nonsense ex-Marine who wants to play by the rules and play fair. I mean, there are some old-school people still out there, so Richard's quite optimistic we're going to prevail on this question.
What if it doesn't get, what if this lawsuit does not go before the judge before Tampa? Are we just going, I mean, is there any penalty to delegates that are signed on to this, even the stealth ones that weren't supposed to be revealed per se, that now are out in the open as public record on this lawsuit and their names are out there and everything? Does that scare you guys that it could put delegates in more of harm's way if this doesn't get addressed by the time the convention comes around?
No, and you've got two issues there. One is that we have stealth, that there are a lot of stealth delegates out there. I don't know how their states are, but as vocal and as visible as Ron Paul people are, I find it quite humorous to think that there's a whole army of people in their states who have been able to hide their political preference from the professionals that run those parties. That's just laughable on the face of it. But let's assume there are some. But, you know, the bigger question is, what about all of us people who have already become plaintiffs in the lawsuit? What happens to us? Well, there's two different things. First of all, as a plaintiff in a civil rights lawsuit like this, we have litigation privileges, and those protect us from getting retaliation for being in a suit like this. And I just heard today there's another provision of the federal law based on another case, and I haven't been able to read all of that yet, but basically it says that anybody that's involved with trying to tamper with or disturb or mess with a whistleblower or a plaintiff or something like that, I've got it over here, I need to look it up in a minute, they fall under federal penalties too. So if they came up like these Massachusetts delegates, if they had been plaintiffs on the lawsuit before and they came and tried to strip their delegate status under coercion, which is what it is, you know, they hadn't signed these affidavits that swore they were going to vote for Mitt Romney, or they couldn't be delegates. We had to sign the same kind of a thing in Oklahoma. It just didn't name Mitt Romney. Well, that's coercion. You can't be a delegate unless you sign this thing under penalty of perjury or whatever the civil penalties are. So, but they haven't signed it. I was talking with one of them today on another program, and, you know, they think they can work inside the system and convince these organized crime people that make up the guts of the Republican Party, you know, they think they can make them stand to reason, and they can't. You know, I mean, the higher up you go, the more it gets hooked into the establishment. We know that. I mean, the elites control both parties.
The other thing that I was on the conference call for a little while last night, I had other things that I had to do kid-wise, but I was listening, and it just seemed to me, and trust me, I'm just being honest, it seemed to me there was a lot of fear-mongering, like a lot of trying to make people scared and, you know, threatening that, you know, the mafia of the Romney camp is going to hurt people. And I just feel like if you wanted to come about this in a little bit more of a professional and straightforward way, those kind of things would be kind of shied away from. You yourself came out and said that Jesse Benton is working for Mitt Romney. Now, I mean, I don't like Jesse Benton either, but what proof do you have of that? Do you have any proof to back that claim up? And if so, can you provide it for us?
Well, I'm not the one that said he worked for Romney. It was Richard that said that. But, I reached the conclusion, let's put it this way, okay? You can only make an inductive case. It's like a forensic case, like what's going on here. I reached the place in mid-March after our horrible experience with the person that the National Party foisted on us against all of the grassroots objections. He ended up creating a parallel organization, and by his actions, whether it was his intent or not, I mean, he's a very difficult person, but whether it was his intent or not, he effectively sabotaged a great deal of our work. We think we lost the 2nd Congressional District because so many people were so turned off by this guy's authoritarian ways and things he was saying. I mean, he had a meeting with people in their very first meeting in early January when he first appointed himself. And that's a story in itself, but it all goes right back up to John Tate because, I can get into that, but the trail for this guy goes up to John Tate, where he appointed himself, and he told the people up in the Tulsa area right away that Ron Paul was not going to win this election. This is in January, mind you, just after, I thought we were going to double our Ron Paul support in mid-December. I was ready. My bones were, everything was vibrating. It was before they started snuffing the air out with the cheating that went on the Iowa caucuses. But they were so disillusioned. He said, Ron Paul's not going to win this time. This is all building up for Rand Paul in 2016. I mean, I was told this by one of the people that was there in the meeting with him. He said, this campaign was all about Rand Paul. I mean, what would that do for your enthusiasm that you're rabid for Ron Paul?
I know, and I've seen a lot of that too, and I understand it. I mean, even when I interviewed Doug Weed a few weeks ago, he talked about Rand being president and the endorsement and stuff like that. And it irked me a little, and I kind of pressed him on it also.
Yes.
Yeah, but let's change gears just a little bit here. Okay.
With the sabotage of the campaign, I would like to talk about the sabotage of the Ron Paul campaign at some time tonight.
Yeah, of course. I have a problem with that. We still have a half hour, so I just have like a couple more questions. I want to take a couple from down here, and then we can talk about that for the rest of the time. It's an open floor. I think Pat is here. No, it's Carlos. Okay. Carlos, I'll bring you up in a second. So it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, and you know better than me, that the lawsuit was brought up by Richard Gilbert, and then Lawyers for Ron Paul came along and said, let us help you. They created this group, Lawyers for Ron Paul. Let us help you publicize this, spread the message, get it out there. Is that how it happened, or can you shed some light on that?
Well, I was not involved when they'd gotten together. My guess is they got together 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. May have been more, but Richard had tried to contact the campaign and offer his services and this basic premise on the lawsuit back in November. And the campaign wanted to have nothing to do with it. And he kept working on it, and I've never seen any of his Twitter feeds. Evidently he has a strong Twitter following, but I haven't been on there. I'm still trying to figure out how to do Twitter. I got my camera so I could do Liberty Chat tonight. I had to do it blindly the other day, but where was I?
How did Lawyers for Ron Paul get involved with Richard Gilbert in the first place?
So Richard was working on this whole idea independently, and the David Callahan and others in the Lawyers for Ron Paul got together, and I can't really tell you how it all came together. I just know they came together and they found each other, and David said that when he and Richard started talking and they came to such quick agreement and decided to work together, that their meeting was basically a miracle. That's the way they phrase it, because they had a huge common interest, and that brought them together. And I'd say it's another miracle, I would say, that I'm talking to you tonight, because, you know, I got put into a position of helping to handle some of the public face of the campaign through, or of what we're doing, our campaign, if you will, through the executive committee for the Lawyers for Ron Paul. And I've had this sabotage discovery burning in me since the middle of March. And once it began to dawn on me, nobody told it to me. I began to think, how can they be so destructive? I mean, I called out the guy that appointed the state coordinator, basically. And he's a good buddy of John Tate's, and I called him out on the biggest political blog in Oklahoma. And I said, this guy has to have credit for the disaster. They had a topic that said, what went wrong with the Ron Paul campaign? This is the middle of March. By then we knew that they were cooked, basically. And I added to it, I talked about what had happened, and then I added, but full credit has to go to this guy that made it all possible, and even when people complained, he let it happen, and he's got to know this has got to be bad for his political reputation. And 3 or 4 or 5 days go by, and it's not a peep. I don't hear from him. He doesn't respond or anything. I thought, my goodness, I just basically said this huge failure of the Ron Paul campaign in Oklahoma to get 15% of the vote in Super Tuesday has got to fall at his feet. And I said, this can't look bad for somebody whose job it is to win the election for Ron Paul in Oklahoma. And I went, wait, what if that's not what he's trying to do? What if his job is really to sabotage the campaign and make it look like a campaign, but not even get onto the ballot?
The funny thing is, and I'm just echoing sentiment, is that that's what a lot of people in this movement think that you guys are trying to do. I know that you think that it's disinformation and stuff, but there are ties between Lawyers for Ron Paul and other groups that make people question the integrity of Lawyers for Ron Paul. And if maybe, Richard Gilbert was separate from this group, we might not be having these questions. But because this group came in and did what they did, there are all these questions that people have about connections and backroom deals and all kinds of things that, like I said, I'm not really educated enough to speak to. But
Tracy, first we've got to remember one thing. We have what we call trolls on the internet, but we have disinformation and disruptive people.
A lot of those trolls are my friends. Sorry. A lot of those trolls, people you're calling trolls, are my friends that I know are not trolls.
Tracy, I didn't call anybody specifically a troll. I said, let's first say there are people that are trolls. Okay. They are consciously disinformation agents. Then there are other people I found that, I've actually found some personality disorders in some people in some conversations I've had where people can't seem, they say, what color is this dot? And I say, it's black. And they say, yeah, but what color is this dot? And I say, it's black. And they say, but how can we be sure this dot is black? And I don't know. Some people cannot be satisfied. The fact of the matter is that this lawsuit is the best hope we have to get the nomination for Ron Paul in Tampa. No one else who is criticizing this that I know of has a plan to get Ron Paul the nomination. You know of anybody with a plan right at this point that has any chance of getting Ron Paul the nomination?
I do.
What is the plan?
The plan was created back in, I don't know what, when Ron Paul pretty much conceded and everyone went crazy. The plan was created then on a chat on libertychat.com that we were to get a grassroots army to go out and speak to each and every delegate in each state and educate them on the rules and have them then go vote their conscience and convert the delegates one by one on a grassroots level. I am glad that you guys are doing this. If I just look at the lawsuit, I think it's a good thing. I am not against it at all. If I look at the other things that go along with it, I'm questioning what that stuff all means. And then if I look at the chances of negative consequences from either this not being settled in time or not being, coming out in our favor, aren't we right back at the status quo? So what was the point of going to the media and branding and having all this stuff, done? How is this going to be some groundbreaking thing that accomplishes what we've never had before? What's going to change?
if we win, all the delegates are going to be unbound, and we're going to have the situation you're asking for. I agree with, let me state emphatically, I agree that we also need to use the approach you're talking about, and I have advocated that. I first heard that one from Adam Kokesh, and I agree with that. In fact, I've told our people in Oklahoma, and I haven't had time to write up on it, but I said we need to begin Operation Charm. And that means we need to sit down and assess each of the official delegates that are there and do our own research on them, see who's hopeless, and leave them alone, and see who's reachable, and let's get each person to pick out 1 or 2 or 3 people and actually be friends with them and let them know we don't eat babies for breakfast while we're doing drugs or whatever they accuse us of doing. You know, I mean, these people are nuts. What they're doing, they have scared these people. So I don't see that these are antithetical efforts. I mean, they're, you know, you said the lawsuit by itself is good. Well, I agree the lawsuit by itself is good, and it's very important. A lot of these other issues that are being raised, I've heard people saying, oh my gosh, somehow these people are tied in bed with WTPN. Well, I'm not familiar. I've heard just brief things about that, and I'm not interested in all of that. If WTPN wants to broadcast a show or we talk to people, that's just fine with me. I'm happy to go on them like I am on with your show, or, you know, I was on with the Ron Paul girl before I came on here today. I want to get the word out. That's what I want to do. But a lot of these things that are attacking Richard Gilbert and raising these questions, you know, here's what it reminds me of. The first Bible study I ever taught was on the book of Nehemiah back when I was a state rep. And if you know the story of Nehemiah, he wanted to go rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He just got this message from the Lord, basically, and he talked to the king of Persia, and he got funded, and they went back there. But while they were, and he talked to the people and got the people involved, and yes, let's rebuild the walls, because back then having physical walls gave you some security. And so while they were rebuilding the walls, there were these guys represented by the names of Sanballat and Tobiah, who came by and kept telling them, oh, you're going to lose. This is futile. You know, Nehemiah's a jerk. You know, he's sleeping with your mother. You know, all kinds of stuff like that. And Nehemiah said, look, stop listening to these naysayers. Keep your eye on the prize. Stay at work. So, I've dealt with these people for 3 weeks, okay? And I can generally tell when somebody's putting a shine on and when they're sincere and honest. I think you're asking very sincere questions. I've been dealing with these people, and I had no reason to doubt their integrity or their sincerity at all. I mean, I do know that Richard Gilbert is doing this pro bono, which means free if somebody there doesn't understand. He's not charging us a thing.
Well, that's a good, you know, you bring up a good point, and I really don't want to interrupt you, but you bring up a really good point. Pro bono, I read that if you guys lose this for the RNC and whoever the defendants are.
Well, I don't think so, because we're just asking the judge a question right now. That's what we're basically doing.
I mean, they still have to come and represent themselves, right? I mean, they're not going to just not show up. Is it just, do you have to go to trial? Are you in a courtroom, or do they, like...
Well, I don't know. I've been told over and over again that, and I've heard the explanation. I'm frankly forgetting some of the finer points. I won't try to wing it, but I've heard it in a very convincing way, and I forget exactly what it is. That because it has to do with the way the question is being raised, that we're not liable for attorney's fees. And we're not asking for any kinds of damages. We're just asking for an injunction to unbind all the delegates.
So then you need to literally take that injunction. Each delegate needs to bring that with them to the floor. Now, does this entitle them another U.S. Marshal to protect them specifically? How does this affect the security down at the convention itself?
That's an interesting question. I've understood that the judge can command that U.S. Marshals be there to protect our rights. Marshals protecting the Liberty people from the big bad Republicans.
I think they have something like $4 million set aside, or it's probably more than that, for the Department of Homeland Security provides money to the RNC to actually secure and protect this area, which is going to be obviously very, very filled with tension, or very charged, I should say.
Very tight security. I'm hoping we go down there and that we're the nicest, friendliest people that anybody ever meets. We just want to be free, and we're tired of all this bullshit.
I think that, you know, I just think that with all the great information you're providing me, I still don't have my definitive answers that I want. And I was listening to the conference call last night, and, you know, I guess it's expected, someone who's being kind of railed with a bunch of questions that question their integrity and question their past and their background to get upset and to fire back a little bit. But Richard Gilbert was like, you know, I tried to get him on, but he wasn't available, and he was just attacking people, man. You didn't like a question, you hung up on him. I mean, it was kind of, it stunk. Like, I'm like, you know, we just want answers. That's all that we're here for.
I got a little testy with one person there, but, you know, I just sort of take that. I mean, evidently part of that kind of personality goes from being, I think he's originally from the New York area. And that, I've heard that goes with that. You know, I'm from Oklahoma, and we're just all nice, friendly people here. Are you a New Yorker, Tracy?
I am. I'm from Long Island. I'm a New Yorker. I know the schools that Richard attended. They're my neck of the woods. So.
Okay. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
To an extent, yeah.
Oklahoma, I've got to say.
I just.
Please tell me what are your biggest fears? Let's talk about your biggest fears, because you've been very oblique with a number of your concerns, and there has to be one or two or three specific things that when you and your friends you're talking about are talking that is like the big red flag for you. And let's get it out here, and so we can talk about it. Okay.
My first big flag, and I tried to steer away from this a little bit, is the connection between We the People Network and Lawyers for Ron Paul. That's my first big flag. We had Pat on at Ron Paul Tribune the other night, and we started digging into it, and you know, he was very forthcoming with his answers, but he did hide some things, and I like transparency, and you know, this is a civil lawsuit, and it's pretty black and white, and I don't think providing certain information has the chances of, you know, putting this whole lawsuit at risk, or putting people at risk for that matter.
What does that have to do with WTPN? I'm sorry, what does WTPN have to do with this? I mean, I've never had any specific explanation of what the controversy is on that, but you know, we just have a few minutes, so we shouldn't spend too much time on that probably. But I do know this, that WTPN has no official connection with either the Lawyers for Ron Paul or the Executive Committee for Ron Paul.
Well, that's the next question I have. Who's on the board? I mean, who is the Executive Committee? Who's on the board? Who are the people above you that are making decisions and kind of guiding conversation? And we were told that we couldn't have that information. It was privileged information, and we weren't allowed to know.
Well, Richard Gilbert's our guiding force, and in terms of the support staff, David Callahan. You know, they're the two top principals in this, and then there's other people working there. But you know, it's not important, I don't think. I mean, we're up front with all of this, but it's not important to reveal everything about who we are, I don't think, because, you know, we're not in this for any kind of gain, except we want to get Ron Paul the nomination for president. That's what we want. I mean,
I know you, Porter, for years. Before we even got into this conversation, we've been friends on Facebook, and we've had conversations. So, you know, that's not a question to me as far as you go. But when you're asking an entire revolution to get behind something, and then you say, well, we're not going to tell you this, and you're talking to Ron Paul supporters and liberty lovers and people who like transparency, that's not going to fly very well with the people who are trying to get on board with you. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, I mean, what, you want to know the name of every last person that's in our group? I mean, Joyce Riley's in our group. You know Joyce Riley? She won't mind me telling you that, because I was on with Stan Monteith today. Joyce Riley's in our group. Okay?
You're going to name people. I'm not going to know who they are. Like, that's not where I'm coming from. And at the beginning of the show, I even specifically said, I don't know enough about this whole thing to intelligent.
So I'm concerned they don't know every last name of every person in the group, right?
Yeah.
Well, how many people listening right now can name 5 people on the staff at Ron Paul's national campaign right now? Just 5, much less all 20 or 25 people that are on there. I mean, Come on, give me a break.
I
Next question, please.
Actually. But that's just me. I don't know. That's one concern. That's one concern. Let's move on from that. I'm sure this will be discussed again. Carlos has a show. He knows a lot more than I do coming on after mine. Not here, but elsewhere. My second thing is I just don't know if I necessarily get what the point is. Like, what is it really going to do? If they rule in favor, what's going to change just because this, what really will change?
Okay, visualize this. Here's the deal in Oklahoma. On the slate that the Central Committee actually put together that they rammed down our throats with 25 delegates and 25 alternates, we had 3 Ron Paul people on all of that, and we identified at least 60% that were for Romney. They really were, believe it or not. You know, but then the others, besides our 3 people out of 50, the rest of it, almost 50%, you know, 45% or whatever, were for somebody besides Mitt Romney. Okay, but for whatever, they wanted to be delegates, and they got put on that slate. And when I left our first delegate meeting, I went out to the parking lot, and there was a guy there that was up against all 6 of us running for delegate and alternate in the 5th district. He ran one at a time against each one of us because we all were coordinating. We all knew who we were all going to vote for on the first ballot. So our first guy got elected, our second guy got elected, and this guy lost 5 times. It was my turn running for alternate, and I ran and I beat him too. So, and he heads up, you know, some political advocacy group in Oklahoma, and I saw him in the parking lot. And we started talking in a minute or two, and he just spilled out. He said, "I've never been for Mitt Romney," and this guy's a delegate who's probably he may have picked Santorum as the one because Santorum got some pledged, and so did Gingrich. He may be for one of those people. Well, if somebody, and think about everybody you know that wasn't for Ron Paul, they may have started out for Bachman, then they switched to Herman Cain when she crashed. You know. Most people that weren't dyed-in-the-wool for Romney were at least for one other candidate before that. And if they were for another candidate, they had to also be against Romney. So if somebody said, "Why aren't you for Romney?" they could argue why they didn't like Romney. But now they're stuck with Romney. You add the fact that they haven't been gung-ho for Romney all along, then you add 2 more months between now and Tampa. And hope if this suit keeps building like I think it will, it's going to be big news when this happens. And these delegates that are going down there realizing that now they are freed up, that they really are free, and not only that, but the court has ordered that, and they are even sending marshals, then this might be a good place where Tracy Diaz can come talk with them and say, "Hey, I understand you're finally inbound, and gee, it's too bad that Michelle Bachmann and John Huntsman didn't make it, but oh, what the heck. But are you really for Mittens, the two-faced gangster here that has Karl Rove running his campaign from behind the scenes and the whole Bush neoconservative stable of advisors running his foreign policy? Do you really want more war? Do you really want busting more budget? Do you really want what we had with Bush? I mean, Bush brought us Obama, so
yeah.
You know, all these people are open. So just imagine today if we could snap our fingers and all the delegates were suddenly unbound. You think in 8 weeks we could have a time to really do what you're talking about, what I call Operation Charm? Well, we're not going to get them unbound in 8 weeks, but hopefully as this lawsuit picks up momentum and we get more people on it, it will start getting more news. We have purposely not gone to the mainstream media with this lawsuit, but let's even ask Ron.
The mainstream media, and this actually brings me back to the point that I was trying to make. It's been picked up by the mainstream media. In a number of different outlets. And the reason why it was picked up is because you came out and said, "We are taking over the Ron Paul campaign." Now, the second you start saying that, people in this movement are going to lose their minds. What's going on here? Who are these people? Where did they come from? What do they do? What are their backgrounds? You know, who do they represent? The questions just... You can't come out and say something like that and not expect some sort of...
Tracy, it was a bodacious move. I didn't write the headline. I might have written a different headline if I had been involved a little bit earlier in the effort. But Richard, who's from your neck of the woods, wrote the headline on that, and I had to go with it. But frankly, what do you take over? What we've done is symbolically stood up for the Liberty Movement and said, we're taking over. We, the Liberty Movement, are taking over from you, Jesse Benton, you other traitors to the Liberty Movement that are sabotaging the Ron Paul campaign. We, the Liberty Movement, are taking over. But that just means we're saying, go do your stuff. Let's all come together now like we did at the state level when we kicked out the Ron Paul campaign and we went and got all the delegates and did the parking lot convention. Let's every state now stand up and stop taking orders from Jesse Benton and wait for the secret plan that he and Doug Weed are going to spring at the last minute, which maybe is we get a platform plank or whatever. You know, it's not going to be anything if we get anything. I mean, these guys are playing us for fools. And so that all that is, and we've explained it a lot, and people don't get it really, but we're just saying, go do your thing. It's just like Alex Jones says, Tracy, go be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. Grassroots, stop waiting for orders from Jesse because they ain't coming, or if they do, it's the wrong thing. Now get to work. That's all we're doing. And there's two separate organizations, remember. There is a separation between the legal team, which is actually doing the suit, and the executive committee for the lawyers for Ron Paul that is doing what we're doing right now.
So when you say legal team, there's more than one attorney involved with this working pro bono?
I don't even know all of the people on the legal team. I mean, there's paralegals and Richard Gilbert, and, you know, they're getting the job done. I'm working on the executive committee for it, basically, and trying to get plaintiffs at the same time. But Richard Gilbert's the lead attorney on it, and who he might be consulting with, I'm not sure, but he has other attorneys in his circle. I mean, this guy's brilliant. I was so impressed with what he said last night, his grasp of the issues, and I tell you, if every Ron Paul person I knew had his attitude right now, which is basically, let's get the job done and take no prisoners, I think we could certainly get this done. But the movement has suddenly gotten a strange case of cold feet, and I don't understand it. And then part of it's this disinformation that's coming out. And I'm not saying this is your friends, but somebody's planting these ideas and planting these suspicions. And you know, the deepest trolls are going to be people that might look like they're actually allies.
Porter, you know, I appreciate you, and you know that I do, and I respect you a great deal. Could it possibly be that you've just not been involved for long enough to know all the details?
Well, I'm learning more all the time, but I wasn't there from the beginning, so I obviously, you know, like any organization, I just know what I've been told about what happened before. But I do know WTPN's not officially involved with it. We have a small group of about, in the executive committee, of 15 or 20 people right now. We're not expanding it very large, and we've made decisions about people to be sort of the public face, different places. But, you know, I mean, we're trying to get the job done. Again, people don't know who's on Ron Paul's campaign staff, but I don't know anybody out there that has said, whoa, I'm not going to work for Ron Paul.
You know what, though? That's because Ron Paul has 30 years of consistency behind him that we can look to and trust, whereas this person just came out and said they're taking over the Ron Paul campaign a week after he decided he was going to, you know, it's different. It's completely different, Porter, not knowing who's on Ron Paul's campaign staff and then having an attorney bring a lawsuit in California all of a sudden saying all delegates are unbound and nobody knows who the heck anybody is. It's different.
I hear you. You know, I just say try to figure out. The best thing you could do would be to actually sit in on a couple of conference calls and start to hear their heart. Hear what they're saying, understand it. I mean, the call last night was over 3 hours, and all but the first 10 minutes is out there right now in MP3. I mean, really sit down and listen to it and hear the heart and the spirit of what's going on. Listen to David Callahan. He's on there. Hope Henley's on there. Nikki Nelson's on there. We're all on this team together. Pat Jack was on there. Oh, gosh, Pat was supposed to be on tonight.
Yeah, he's here. He's up here with us. He hasn't said anything yet, though. I'm not downgrading the heart and the spirit of you guys that are working on this at all. I just want to make that clear. I don't sit here and say that you guys are trying to do something nefarious at all. That's not what I'm trying to do. And people in the chat are getting angry with me for keeping this going. But I just think that, you know, we need to be sure that we can trust everything that's going on. It's my show. I can really ask whatever I want, to be honest. So,
it's your show, darling. It's your show. Hello. I mean, you're in charge here. So listen, I I want you to get it out here. Let's talk about it. Let's put this thing out, and I'll come back and we'll talk about some of these things. But I'm just telling you, I mean, we didn't take over anything. What did we take over? Did I take you over? Did I take over Liberty Chat? Heck no. I mean, we're sure as heck we are declaring independence. And let's make this very clear. I'm calling out Jesse Benton as a traitor to the Liberty Movement. He has worked to sabotage, as the head of this campaign, he has worked to sabotage this campaign. You'd have to be an imbecile, a total doofus, and an incompetent to waste the grassroots resources the way they wasted them. After the first debate we had, they should have been on the spot the next day with total statistics saying, we had 8 candidates here, each candidate should have gotten 15 minutes to speak. Ron Paul got 77 seconds. The media, we're not going to allow the media to make this choice for the American people. What did they do? They did nothing. They didn't say anything after any of these debates. Now, we don't notice it as much because we're all over the internet. We're going, oh, this is crazy. But
I actually have more time, Porter. I have more time than an hour tonight. I don't believe the show that's supposed to come on next after mine is coming. I want to ask you if I can bring up Carlos Beltran. He's got a lot of questions. It's up to you whether or not you want to answer them.
Listen, I'm a truth seeker. Okay, I am a truth seeker, and I'm not afraid. Let's have a conversation and a dialogue. Okay.
Can I say something?
I'm game. That's what I'm here for.
All right, I'm going to step away for just a second. Carlos, you go ahead, and I will be right back.
Hey, Carlos.
Nice to meet you, sir. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, sir. It's great to know that people like you that have what seems like good intentions are out there fighting for the delegates and fighting for the prosperity of our campaign. My questions are very, very basic, and I'm going to ask them concisely, and I would like a very honest answer from you.
Okay.
We the People Network is a group that is comprised of many groups on Facebook, and they've tried to make themselves a very integral part of our campaign. Okay. When I'm asking you, and what I already know ahead of time, you don't have to tell me the truth or not, you can just tell me what you think, but I know for a fact that We the People Network comprises 80% or more of the executive committee for Lawyers for Ron Paul. Are you aware of this?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, you can investigate that later on your own. We the People Network, whether I have a problem with them or not, is irrelevant. I would like to make sure there's full disclosure. What I would like to also make sure that there's full disclosure about is the fact that Richard Gilbert filed this lawsuit prior to your involvement, and not you, but the Lawyers for Ron Paul group created their group prior to Richard Gilbert's lawsuit without ever having spoken to or been involved with Richard Gilbert. So basically what I have understood from the information I've gotten is that Richard Gilbert filed his lawsuit, and then at that point, there's people that have piggybacked onto the lawsuit. Yes, it is true. Yes, it is. I'm positive. I know for a fact the dates of when the Lawyers for Ron Paul group was created by We the People Network and when Richard Gilbert filed his lawsuit. So I would like for you to be honest with us.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, the lawsuit was filed June 11th.
Okay.
And Lawyers for Ron Paul came into existence, I think, several months before that, maybe a month or two.
Right. Right, exactly. So this group was in existence, and we're trying to create a name for themselves much prior to the lawsuit. And this group has now piggybacked themselves onto the lawsuit filed by Richard Gilbert. Is it not true that Richard Gilbert filed this lawsuit, not not Lawyers for Ron Paul? Richard Gilbert filed it, not Lawyers for Ron Paul, right?
Right. I think that's correct. Yes.
Okay. And Lawyers for Ron Paul is a piggyback group that has decided that they will support and help the efforts of Richard Gilbert's campaign, correct?
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
I said Richard Gilbert filed this campaign, and Lawyers for Ron Paul is piggybacking and attempting to assist Richard's campaign.
Yes. Well, it's not a campaign. He filed a complaint in the 9th District Court, and we're providing a lot of the help to help bring delegates into being plaintiffs. People asking what kind of staff he has, and in effect, we're helping to support what he's doing, and there are paralegals that are volunteering, and so I don't understand the controversy. I mean, I'm truly, before I got involved in in this lawsuit, I thought We the People Network was still the one that I guess went out of existence 2 or 3 years ago. So I know nothing about the controversy except a few things I've heard. So
And that's totally understandable, Porter. I don't hold you at any account for my research, but from the research that I found is that there's a gentleman named Kyle Hyde, and somebody, Buff Muff, I think just answered this in the group here. There's a gentleman that they have hired that is being paid through funds that are donated to the Lawyers for Ron Paul group based off of us supporters. And we would like to know, people that are donating money to this effort and to this campaign to release the delegates from any binding, we would like to know that the people that are saying that they are taking over the Ron Paul campaign have just and exclusively good moral standing for what they're doing. Now, what I've found, and the information that I've found, is that that is not true. And I would like you to address the fact that the organization We the People Network has absolutely nothing to do with the actual Richard Gilbert lawsuit, and neither does Lawyers for Ron Paul. If Lawyers for Ron Paul were to disappear today, right now, the Richard Gilbert lawsuit would still continue, correct?
correct.
Okay, so that's what I want to make sure that people understand here, is that A, Lawyers for Ron Paul is a piggyback group, and that if you choose to support the lawsuit, you can support the lawsuit without supporting Lawyers for Ron Paul. And B, Lawyers for Ron Paul is a front group, a group that has been created to further the goals of We the People Network. We the People Network has many pages on the internet that try to garner money and try to get money through money bombs and donations from Ron Paul supporters for really, honestly, unrealistic goals and unrealistic amounts. They say that they have 5 to 8 million subscribers and viewers to their information, which is absolutely and patently false, which I've documented through Alexa, Alexa, the internet ranking company. I've documented it through them and other places. So what I'm trying to focus on is this. This is where my focus is.
The points you're raising, Carlos.
Porter, just give me last little second here, Porter. The last bit that I'm going to point to is the fact that because of the information that I found, I feel that We the People Network, Lawyers for Ron Paul, and Pat Jack are being disingenuous and dishonest with the supporters in the idea that they're A, taking over the campaign, and B, have any serious involvement other than a few members being part of the lawsuit with the lawsuit that Richard Gilbert is filing. That is what my contention is.
So, well, I say you've crammed so much in there. I'm trying to think about all the points you were making. I can say this is, to the very best of my knowledge, we're not raising any money to support this lawsuit. So the idea that somebody got money from fundraising efforts for this lawsuit, unless there's some kind of a private fundraising effort that I'm unaware of, I know of no fundraising effort for the lawsuit. In fact, we have been strictly told not to have any talks about money or raising money inside the executive committee for the Lawyers for Ron Paul. So whatever you've heard, if payments were made to somebody from somebody, it had absolutely nothing to do with anything that I know is officially connected with Lawyers for Ron Paul.
So Lawyers for Ron Paul is 100% separate from the actual lawsuit itself, is what you're saying?
Well, it's not 100% separate because we're helping to support the efforts to recruit plaintiffs to be on the lawsuit. We're providing services to help do that. So, and we're not being paid to do this. Goodness gracious, I've been putting in a great deal of time in the last 3 weeks. And so if somebody's pulling a scam off on me, it wouldn't be the first time it happened, but I'd be quite surprised.
Your efforts seem genuine. I absolutely agree that your efforts personally seem genuine, and I thank you for them. But what I'm saying is that from what I can tell here, the Lawyers for Ron Paul group links directly to electionfraudremedy.com, which asks people to purchase a $49.95 information packet on how to further their understanding of election fraud. Also, if you link to the We the People Network /membership page, you will see that there is a money value assigned to every person, and if you donate $5, $10, $15, $20, then you get varying levels of information about the organization, which is not correct, in my opinion, with an organization that is trying to be a front group for a Ron Paul revolution. Now, Lawyers for Ron Paul has specifically stated that they are attempting to take over the Ron Paul campaign. They have said, we are taking over, those were their words, the Ron Paul campaign. What relevance does that actually have, and does that relevance have anything to do with the lawsuit?
There are two separate actions. I don't see I know that an associated website, what you're saying about this $49 information pack, I had to go look, and I don't see that.
Yeah, but, they took it down, Porter, that's why.
Okay. I mean, I found out, what I get through the lawsuit, but I'm sorry, repeat the question again. I was trying to look at that election fraud remedy side.
Is there any, it seems like there is a definite connection towards monetary gain and We the People Network and Lawyers for Ron Paul. And it's obvious through the $49.95 info packet and through the membership scam that We the People Network is trying to run. We the People Network's executive committee for their actual organization, which is founded out of Florida. You can look it up. It's WTPN LLC Inc. That is the name of their group. It is a for-profit organization. It is attempting to create money bombs and create monetary donations to support their efforts. Their efforts go to support you as well, and I won't say that they don't. But your efforts as Lawyers for Ron Paul is also subsided by the fact that all of, if not most of, the members of the Lawyers for Ron Paul Executive Committee are on We the People Network's Executive Committee. That's what my problem is the fact that you have two different organizations, one that won't tell us the names of their Executive Committee, which is Lawyers for Ron Paul, and two, We the People Network, whom I know the Executive Committee for.
Hold on. Go ahead, Porter.
I've just told you, the most active people are David Callahan, Hope Henley, who assists him. Pat Jack's been working with us. Nikki Nelson. They were all on the call last night. We're meeting the most. So when Dr. Cass Ingram's on there, Dr. Cass, Dr. K. So, these are all people I've just met, and I have had no reason to pick up anything nefarious going on except the noblest of motives. So, and if We the People Network's trying to find a way to actually get funded so they can operate, I don't mind. I don't know if they're running a scam. I haven't given them any money. I don't even know how to listen to the program except one podcast I've heard.
You've listened to it every time you've listened to a Lawyers for Ron Paul broadcast on the Liberty Hour, which is hosted by We the People Network. And that has been every broadcast except for the very last one in which Jesse, I think it's Jesse from Ron Paul Tribune. And just so you guys know, I have no connection at all with Ron Paul Tribune. I just go on there and chat every once in a while and chit-chat with them. But I think Jesse from Ron Paul Tribune suggested that you guys use the free conference call program to do your guys' conference calling. And you guys took that option to heart, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate the fact that you guys were willing to step back a little bit from this We the People Network situation. But my problem is that We the People Network wholly owns, and I know for a fact wholly owns, and the executive committee has a majority that are We the People Network partners. Because of that, I have distrust in We the People Network, and because of that, I have trust in Lawyers for Ron Paul. What I would like to know from you, Porter Davis, if you would be willing to give me this information as a serious Ron Paul supporter, what are all the names of the individuals that are associated with Lawyers for Ron Paul's executive committee? I know one of them is Cass Ingram. I know several of them are Roger Landry, Lynn Nichols, Nikki.
Landry's not involved in it.
Landry is involved. He may not be.
He's not
named.
What can I tell you? He's not on the executive committee. He's not. He's never been involved in one call we've had. I don't know how you, have you been on any of these calls?
I have. He owns We the People Network. We the People Network is the branding at the beginning of all your calls, and they're the committee that is out there stating that they are taking over the campaign. They personally have committed to the statement that they are taking over the campaign through Lawyers for Ron Paul. And I am on many Facebook plans.
Hold on. Go ahead, Porter.
You've been on one of our conference calls?
All of them. All the last 5 conference calls. Yes, I have. And I've been on before your conference calls. I've been on We the People Network's conference calls. Before you guys, Lawyers for Ron Paul, started doing conference calls on We the People's Network on the Liberty Hour, We the People were doing conference calls for the Liberty Hour, and they were asking for money and asking for donations and money bombs from individuals to try to support their surreptitious or whatever it is website that is attempting to gain control over different Facebook social groups. So because of that, I've gained knowledge.
Hold on.
Conference calls?
Yes.
I was on a conference call with him today, but that was to set up the, we were talking about the broadcast we were going to do tonight, and that's the first time I've met him.
Are you talking about your guys' personal conference calls, or are you talking about the ones that are made public?
I'm talking about our own conference calls that we do among the executive committee. That's executive committee work, and now they've had some conference calls under GoToMeeting, I think it is, with various state delegations and things, but if there's any other conference calls, that would be something that's totally unassociated with what we're doing in the executive committee for Lawyers for Ron Paul.
Well, luckily for the executive committee of Lawyers for Ron Paul, I've never been on any of those particular private conference calls, but I have friends that have, and they are feeding me information that tells me that the group The People Network is very heavily associated with Lawyers for Ron Paul. If you don't know this, I suggest, as Porter Davis, as a great individual that is out there fighting for liberty, you look this up. But I know for a fact there's some shady things going on.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. I'm taking a pulse in the room here, Carlos. No offense to you. I'm just taking a pulse in the room. We have 80 people in here. It's pretty much half and half. People want to hear about this and the people that don't. So I want to try and tie it up here. And Porter, if you have a few more minutes, I want to take some questions from the room for you about the suit and stuff. And I appreciate you doing this. Let's just sum it up. Let's take We the People Network out of it. The lawsuit. The main thing I want to know is there any penalty possible for the delegates that sign on to this lawsuit prior, when it gets to the convention? If you guys are in the middle of the case, if you're not, if it's been decided, if it hasn't, could there be anything that would force the delegates to not be able to vote at all, or disqualify them or anything like that?
Well, as plaintiffs, they have litigation privileges against any further abuse, basically. So if somebody's signed on as a plaintiff and they go to further coerce, threaten, or intimidate them and to disenfranchise them from their voting rights, hopefully those federal marshals will be there and give us protection. I mean, we're hoping the legal system has a little bit of justice left in it, and the full-blown fascism doesn't come into play before then. Okay, great. All right, there's nothing the RNC can do to say, since you did this, you can't vote, or since you did this, you can't do A, Y, A, B, or C. There are penalties against them doing that. And then I just saw this one, and I was given this just today by one of the other guys that I was talking with in another call, and I can't find it right now, but it has to do with tampering with witnesses and with informants. So we have some more than just litigation privileges because we put our names on this action here. Is that also for civil suits, or is that just for criminal suits? I don't know, but it has to do with what we're involved in. I know that. I just want to make sure, Carlos, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for coming up. I just want to make sure that you're not taking criminal law or criminal protections and then transferring them to a civil action. That's the only I guess qualm I might have with that. Well, it's actually a bit of a criminal thing to deprive us of our civil voting rights. You're not bringing a criminal suit. You're bringing a civil suit. For violations of some of these things, people can get years in federal prison. That's the law I just saw today. But the next step in this is to file a RICO action because of the racketeering involved in a conspiracy to deprive us of our voting rights. That's great. Okay, so we've got a mix of questions. Is there any intel you can give us regarding mass arrests going on down in Florida? Mass arrests now?
Not now, at the convention, I'm assuming.
I don't know anything about, I think they're going to have very heavy security down there. They've got to be, they're listening to this right now. I mean, we're crazy if we don't think they're monitoring everything we're doing, because they know we're the fly in the ointment. They want to have a grand inauguration of Mitt Romney so they can have a huge sign of unity with the country rallying behind the great frozen leader in stiff white shirts and trying to smile like he has some joy in his life.
Pat wants to talk. Can Pat talk for a minute?
Oh man, I love to hear Pat talk. Go for it, Pat.
Hi, Porter. Just wanted to tell you I was out here in the chat room and was just responding to the people in the chat room. And thanks for making the show. Tracy, thanks for having us on.
Thanks for coming.
I just wanted to say hello. You're welcome. Just wanted to say hello to Porter.
Oh.
Pat. Hello to you, buddy.
Thanks, Porter.
So is there anything I should bring up, Pat, or are you just going to leave me on the hook here for this whole
He's
thing?
right next to you. Don't you see him? He's got a microphone as a face.
Yeah, well, I see that. Well, he sounded like he was signing up, but he's there. Go ahead and ask some more questions. He told me earlier he wanted me to do as best I could, and he hadn't jumped in to save me yet.
All right, let's see. Hold on. We can Pat Jack, another one for Pat Jack. Can you comment on the Romney crime syndicate being affiliated with Bush?
I wrote a blog in 2003 that ranked first in Google searches for impeach Bush and maintained that on WordPress for about 3 months. So I was active in attempting to gather information about Bush's activities. However, I have not researched any connections between Bush and Romney. There are some similarities in them in that they both support war and the dropping of bombs on human beings and blowing them into little bitty pieces while they scream in terror. So that could be a connection between their two crime syndicates, as both of them seem to premeditate murder and conspire with others to commit murder.
Okay. Let's see.
Romney has come out in support of the NDAA. He's in support of these detention camps. He has the whole Bush foreign policy team behind him. He's going to be the ultimate neoconservative. I said that when Obama got elected, I said, you watch, Obama's going to be Bush on steroids. And in every way, he's been Bush on steroids. Romney will be coming in to finish us off.
Unless we win.
Yeah, well, we've got to win. I mean, Tracy, I keep asking, Richard's the one that started me asking this question about the critics. Who's got a better plan? And I think the idea of Operation Charm, where we go in and really get to know the delegates and know them as people, if we get to know delegates as people, in that process they will come to know us as people. And we have got to do that and find common ground, because a lot of the Republicans, I think, started out very libertarian. A lot of the old guard we have fought in Oklahoma came of age with Goldwater, and after that then Reagan, and then even Pat Robertson, but they got involved in the party machinery and started making the compromises that you make for the party. And then you get these Ron Paul people coming in with rampant idealism about libertarian values, and we represent the idealism they turn their backs on. And that's part of the anger that we evoke from some people. We had delegates who had, we had a wonderful delegate who organized a kids convention because we wanted to have our kids there. We wanted the parents there, so she put together childcare, and we had, I think, 25 or 30 different kids in this childcare, and they did a child's convention, and we advertised it, and where am I going with that?
It's okay. I'm going to change the subject on you.
Okay.
I've got someone or a couple people repeatedly asking. Let me just find this. This is coming from the room. Hold on. He says, Hold on, can you type that question one more time, please? Because it lost in the chat. There's so many people going on. Kenny, type that question one more time. Kenny. Kenny. Let me scroll up. I'm sorry, Porter. I have like a big capital. Oh, the head of Lawyers for Ron Paul admitted they were government intel. We want answers.
May I address this, please? May I address this, please? Any person who serves in the U.S. Armed Forces is U.S. intel. Any person who ever works for the government is U.S. intel. If you have a job with the government, the U.S. government can come to you and ask you for information. And if they ask you for information, then if you refuse to give it to them, they can fire you. Because when you work for the U.S. government, you're under an obligation to provide the U.S. government with information. So technically speaking, if you work for the U.S. government, you're U.S. intel. And people who specifically work in intelligence positions for the U.S. government, if they go around telling everybody the details of what they do for the U.S. government, they will be endangering the other people who work in intel with them, and the likelihood that if I were intel and Porter were intel and Porter went around telling everybody I was U.S. intel and he blew our operation, do you think maybe that somebody in that organization might feel that their wife and their children were threatened by the release of that information? This is one of the things we have to realize. When you work in a situation where you can come to harm because of what you do, you have to protect the liberties and freedoms of the people around you. Just like Ron Paul says, if you do something that affects the liberties and freedoms and safety of other people, that's a violation of his ethics. So if you're involved in an agreement with other people where you will not release information about the activities of those people because they could come to harm or be threatened, coerced, or intimidated, and you release that information, then you have endangered that other person and you have substantially tread upon their liberties.
So that's any member of the U.S. military then, correct?
Any member of the U.S. military takes an oath to the U.S. military. And within that oath and within those agreements and those contracts and agreements that they sign, they may not release information or intelligence information unless they're authorized to do so. And if they do, a military court will arrest them, put them in jail, and can try them for some serious crimes. So any member of the U.S. intelligence agents, any member of the U.S. military is certainly bound by the same rules as intel.
Okay, so then I'm going to switch over here again. My own personal question. You guys want as many people...
Okay, go ahead. I was just going to say, when Richard addressed that, he said that Ron Paul, which I found this very interesting, he said Ron Paul has a great deal of support in the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. Besides that, and we already know that, but he made it sound like it's not just the guys pounding the ground in Afghanistan, but higher levels, which I find very reassuring.
Yeah, it's great. Talking Liberty is Tracy Diaz. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not hiding anything. TRACYDIAZ. I just have this as my name because this is the name the room runs on, so that's the only reason why it pops up like that. Anyway, my question was, I don't even remember what it was now. This room is crazy. Hi.
Yeah, it's interesting paying attention to this chat. It can get distracting.
Yeah, it's nuts. Oh, and Facebook detention, that sticks. So what we really want to make sure of now, I guess, is that, you know, just aside from all the links between Lawyers for Ron Paul, We the People Network, and all that stuff, this lawsuit can't harm any delegates in any way for being a part of it. I know you guys want as many delegates signed on to it as possible for effect, I guess you could say, right? The judge sees the more people signed on, the more strength you guys have as far as your
tells us yes. I mean, if we have one person filing this suit as a plaintiff, it doesn't carry as much weight as if we had 50 people in 50 states with all kinds of instances of the election fraud.
So you've got, so now are you, this is the other thing, are you going to court on two separate platforms with this lawsuit? One being getting the delegates to be able to vote their conscience and unbound, and the other being the fraud and the you know, the stuff that's happened in individual states? Because I would think that those kind of things should be brought up with the state.
May I answer this, please?
Sure.
Okay. The purpose of the lawsuit is to prevent any person from feeling as though they're being threatened, coerced, or intimidated.
You say those so many times.
And as such, the idea that we might find election fraud as a part of this lawsuit is contained within the fact that when a person is coerced, threatened, or intimidated, that is a form of election fraud. So if I go out and I find 50 people who are about to vote, and I tell all of them, if you vote for Romney, I will fire you from your jobs at Walmart because I'm the boss at Walmart. That is election fraud because it represents a potential harm that can come to the person if they do not vote their conscience. So voting your conscience is guaranteed in federal law, and it is specifically enumerated as part of our right to vote to the purvey and jurisdiction of the federal government. The Constitution specifically gives the federal government the right to guarantee our right to vote.
Now, all of these violations will, the remedy for them is what we're asking for to get the delegates unbound. The cause of action is the election fraud. The result we want is to unbind the delegates.
So what, on the level, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what is your confidence level that we're going to actually win this case when it comes to, and if they're going to hear it before the convention, for that matter?
Well, my biggest concern is we're not going to be able to overcome the fears that people in the movement have, and that many delegates will not get on board as plaintiffs. If we could get if we could get 1,000 people on this lawsuit, and at least 50 from 50 states, well, that math would work. That's 2,500. But if we had at least 1,000 people, I'd feel more comfortable than I do right now. That's really my biggest fear, is we won't get enough people to hop on board that the judge is going to be persuaded, or that it's pervasive enough. We just have like one delegate from Massachusetts right now, and I was on a call with one, and he's got this idea like, oh, well, we're going to go work to change the party over the next few years, and we don't want to antagonize them with a lawsuit. I'm thinking, I don't think you get the picture yet, my friend. You just don't. And so that's my biggest fear. I think if we had 2,500 people on there and had 50 people from 50 states, I'd feel extremely confident. I think the numbers make that much difference. That is, and I would bet that would be the feeling of most of the people, and that's what I get from Richard. And so, this is why we're going out and we're trying to publicize this. But I think that the people that don't want this lawsuit to happen are doing what they can with place disinformation to create fears in people, and that's where these justifiable concerns come from.
I mean, the suit, it's been filed.
I still don't understand. I've heard it mentioned, but I know that we have no, we may have some WTPN members involved. I don't know, but I don't think so. But I know that we're not officially involved with WTPN. I've heard it mentioned, and as something we need to keep a great separation from. But, but let's assume it was there, okay? If WTPN's not doing anything fraudulent, then tooting their own horn exaggeratedly, I don't see the problem. Now, if they're a big money laundering racket, or they've got some big scam going, that's a different thing. But I haven't had anybody accuse them of anything yet, other than trying to raise some money to fund their operations. And again, I know nothing about the going. I mean, I was Googling around trying to find them to find out what was going on. I kept getting this old network, so I can't even find it just through a straight Google. I get the old dead one. So, I don't understand that part of it, but I do know I believe in the suit. I believe in what Richard's doing, and I believe if we have a lot more plaintiffs than we have right now, especially if we get all the national delegates, we'd be in a very strong position to get Ron Paul the nomination. And I see no other hope. I just don't see that without that we're going to persuade all these people, because, you know, many people are intimidated by peer pressure. And so a lot of these delegates going that aren't crazy about Romney have bought in for years to the old thing, well, let's do it for, you know, let's take one for the party, as Santorum would say. And they'll hold their nose and vote for Romney because he's a Republican. We all know we want anybody but Obama. They have that thinking that's rampant out there. And I think we're fooling ourselves if we think, unless something really dramatic happens, that we're going to get them convinced in 7 or 8 weeks to get up and defy their party and break all that peer pressure and screw up, in their eyes, their future career in the party to vote for Ron Paul. After all, they've been told for 12 months he's unelectable.
Looking through the questions here, and one of the I'm only going to ask this one more time because I've asked it a few times. What are the downsides of this? Worst case scenario, what are the downsides of this lawsuit? Worst case.
Okay, as I understand it, that the litigation privileges apply whether the suit rules in our favor or not. That anybody that would retaliate against us for asking this question would be themselves liable by that fact for further federal action.
Correct.
So that protection from retaliation. The other thing is that Richard designed it, as he says, to do no harm, and that if the judge rules that no, the federal law doesn't trump state law and the Republican Party rule, we're no worse off than we were, but we still have protection from retaliation.
Now, I know that I read most of the filed suit. It's like 143 pages. And like maybe the first 20 of those are signed on delegates. How many were signed on delegates that may have been intimidated, coerced, or whatever the other word you guys say all the time?
Intimidated or coerced.
Yeah, some of them.
Throw fraud in because that's an extension of coercion.
So then, you know, you guys have, it was 20-something pages. There had to be at least 200 on there. Either delegates that weren't elected, that were elected, or that are alternates, or whatever.
Tracy,
So
Tracy,
yeah.
we are currently, Richard Gilbert is currently amending the lawsuit to include more plaintiffs all the time. He's doing this all the time.
And so that's good for you, right?
The larger the sample of people we have in the lawsuit that is representative of the greater group of people that might be represented by delegates and alternates at state level conventions and caucuses, and delegates and alternates at Tampa, the larger the sampling of that population of people, the more that statistically projects for the judge what level of harm they are experiencing may or may not be the level of harm that the greater electorate is experiencing.
Okay, and then someone's asking if Mitt Romney can be charged with the crime. I doubt that that's possible, but...
Mitt Romney can be charged with a crime, as any individual in the United States of America can be charged with a crime. However, you have to find the people who are willing to charge him with the crime, and sometimes people who work for the government and are in a position of charging people with crimes have a political agenda. They have people to protect around them. They have secret people around them, donors that they need to protect, and they are under the control of others, and they will not charge a person with a crime. We saw this in the 20s and 30s when people were bootlegging. We see that now when somebody runs guns over the border. Nobody's being charged with a crime about that. So to say that, can Mitt Romney be charged with a crime? Certainly he can, but you have to find somebody willing to do that. And there is a mechanism that Kelly Mordecai, who is in the chat, Kelly Mordecai is very familiar with, and that is the grand jury. You can petition the grand jury of citizens at your city, county, or state level, depending upon how grand jury is defined in your state. And you can force the local district attorney through a writ of mandamus, you can force him to press charges against somebody according to the decision of a grand jury. So we have tools at our disposal that we can use to force our elected officials and to force our appointed policing officials and judicial officials to charge people with crimes. But that's not being done because people feel coerced, threatened, or intimidated when they attempt to do that.
Okay, so then, is this law just to, I mean, is this suit just to clarify a law that's already on the books, or is this something brand new that's just coming out now?
We're asking the judge a question. We're asking him to clarify for us whether we should follow federal law or state law and Republican Party rules. Which one has supremacy in a presidential election? And our position is we maintain that federal law using the supremacy clause trumps state law and Republican Party rules because of the clear wording in the statutes that deal with the elections and our voter rights.
Okay, Kenny, I'm not going to ask that question. I really don't get it. Maybe that's my ignorance. Can the party be shut down for racketeering? I asked it anyway.
Asking if the party can be shut down?
Yeah.
Well, if we prevail in this, like we hope we do, and then we go on for a RICO suit, I mean, there's no guarantees this is going to work. I mean, let's face it. What other options do we have, folks? If we want Ron Paul to get the nomination in 2 months, what better plan do we have? I mean, this is the spear of the tip of the liberty movement right now for anybody that wants to do it. I mean, we're not taking over. We're liberating the liberty movement, but we're asking for people to join together in this lawsuit so we can bind these criminals for this activity they've done to violate our civil voting rights and disenfranchise us. Let's face it, Ron Paul was on target to win. He was surprising everybody in December. I thought 10% or 15% was going to go to 20 or 30% in 30 days. I talked with a longtime Republican operative in mid-December at a party, and he said, boy, he's really getting everybody's attention. And they shut us down. We had election fraud of one kind or another at every meeting and every primary from the time of the Iowa caucuses on at least Super Tuesday. And I'm not even talking about rigged election machines then. I'm just talking about the other instances they had. So we know they were doing that to us. And I sent Doug Weed they were killing Ron with foreign policy in December and January, right? Ron Paul wants the Islamic people to come nuke us and make us all live under Sharia law. That's basically what they were saying. I came up with an idea and sent it to Doug Weed. I hope he doesn't mind me telling you this, and it was a proposal for conversations with Ron Paul. Because we know Ron Paul does best when he has a good interviewer, and the interviewer lets Ron speak and draws him out so he can explain his positions, and you can't get that in a debate. And I said, okay, Doug, here it is. Let's first start out with an hour and a half of Ron Paul and 2 or 3 advisors of the quality that would make good people in his cabinet or high-level people in foreign policy and national defense. And for an hour and a half, let's go over all of the issues that everybody beats up Ron Paul on and get it in a high-quality interview available 24/7 on the internet per night, quantities of whatever you want. Here's the price list. So we can get the message out. And after we do that, let's follow up and do one on the economy. Let's do one on victimless crimes and the drug war. Let's do one on Ron Paul's family. I had about 6 or 7 categories. And I sent it to Doug, and because I had struck up conversation with him back in August, and I sent it to him, and he didn't acknowledge much. And after a day or two, I said, well, what do you think about it? And I still didn't hear anything. I said, Doug, I sent this to you. What do you think about it? And he said, Porter, it's brilliant, but it's out of my hands. And it was brilliant. I mean, it's not like you or I wouldn't think of it ourselves. I mean, if we were sitting around and said, how can we get out Ron Paul's message because he does so well in an interview format? It's like, duh. But did they do that? No. I mean, and it's just a typical thing. Stan Monteith, Joyce Riley, even Alex Jones after January all tried repeatedly to get Ron Paul on the air to come out and whip up the grassroots. They got no satisfaction from the campaign. So they shut us down. I mean, Benton and these guys conspired with them. They conspired with them. You know, sue me, Benton. Sue me, Jesse Benton. Go ahead, you.
I know. We all have our hatred for the Benton. I know. I want to just end this segment. If you guys have a few more minutes, I have a very intelligent man you might know named Steve Parent coming up. I just want to end this this segment. Well, you can leave if you don't want to watch it. You're not stuck in here. I mean, you have the liberty to leave.
You talking to me?
David. Anyway, I just would like to ask for some more restraint on banning people from groups that have questions and concerns, because that's one of the things that's causing all of this to even happen. I know you don't want people in there screaming and yelling about things and causing problems, but you know, there are a lot of people that I'm friends with that have been banned from the Lawyers for Ron Paul group and others, and I don't think that that is a good thing for our movement especially.
Okay, I do not have any administrative functions in the Lawyers for Ron Paul group on Facebook, because as an information technology professional and specialist, I find that I am unable to work effectively in a group of admins that's 30 or 40 admins. I work much more effectively as an admin with other people who have long-standing experience as an admin. I write programming code for Facebook. I write Facebook applications, and my level of understanding of how to develop a social network and how to function as an admin is not congruent with the current tribe of admins at Lawyers for Ron Paul. And whether it is or isn't...
There's not 30 or 40, there's like 5 or 6.
You know,
in the Lawyers for Ron Paul group?
Opinion on that, okay?
Admins in that group.
Let me give my opinion. My view is that the Lawyers for Ron Paul is a group set up specifically for people who want to support the efforts for the lawsuit. Then conversations need to be in the spirit of helping to get that done. If somebody is engaging purposely or just because of their own personality hang-ups in troll-like behavior instead of rational discussion, my view is get them out of there. Let them go. You know, there's plenty of forums out there. There's all kinds of debates on the Daily Paul and every place else. But if you have a working group for people that are put together for a purpose, just like we had closed groups set up in Oklahoma for
Wait,
we had
Tracy, I have to apologize. There are 7 admins in Lawyers for Ron Paul. I deal with so many groups that sometimes I get confused about the issue.
That's
but
okay.
even 7 admins in a group is 4 or 5 too many, in my opinion. It takes a tremendous amount of communications between admins to manage a group like that. Typically, in my experience, when I've been hired by somebody to open a group for them and am paid to open a group for them, each admin should be able to handle about between 400 and 700 people in the group, because out of 400 to 700, you're really only going to have about 100 to 200 are active, and a 10% activity metric is a real nice metric to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 admins for a group for Lawyers for Ron Paul size would be optimal if I was admin, but I'm not admin, and their tribal configuration there is 7 admins. So I'm not in that group, and I've said before, if I were added as an admin to the Lawyers for Ron Paul group, I would remove myself, because it's an awful lot of work to keep up with 7 admins in a group, much less when you've done it for so long. And it's just, I wouldn't add myself. I've seen other groups that have asked me to be admins for them that have 30, 40, 50 admins for 3,000 or 4,000 people. And so it's admins. You're right on that.
I
mean, you know, if you've got a working group around a purpose, why would you have people that are ultimately being antagonistic and argumentative rather than trying to get answers to questions? There's plenty of other forums for that.
People don't necessarily always agree with your answer, and they're going to retort, because like I said earlier, you know, we don't just listen to what someone says and then just accept it. There's always a rebut. There's never just an answer. I mean, I've been involved in group. I've never been banned from a group. I don't know if it's just because I know the way to interact with people or not, but I've never been banned from a group, and I see a lot of people that I know real close that I know for a long time that are very smart and liberty-minded people have been working their asses off in this movement, getting banned from groups for asking questions that are pertinent questions. And it just, if we could move forward trying to be a little bit less antagonistic, I guess, on banning people, and a little bit more open to, instead of pointing people to a conference call on Wednesday, answering a question if you can, that'd be good. Steve.
Yes.
You have questions.
Yeah, some questions and statements. Hi, Pat. Hi, Porter. Hello, Tracy.
Hi.
I think that there are probably some really valid concerns from some people. There are some people that are more or less just trying to cause division and trouble. I mean, we go through this every election. But I think that some of the valid questions that people have, because of some of the comments that were made, and, I've been back and forth. I mean, I was actually let back into the group. I think one of the things that really sparked a lot of concern for a lot of people is when I was just removed from the group without notice, being the only parliamentarian in the group, by being asked there. That really started raising some red flags. And then the We the People Network thing came up to it, which I got to be honest, I don't know much about it except what I've heard. I don't think about things I don't think about. But I think that the biggest concern that people have is because of the We the People Network, which again, I don't know much about, so bear with me here, folks. And the statement of Lawyers for Ron Paul is taking over the campaign. This has sparked the concern of who are the people that are taking over the campaign. And I know that many people that we've talked about this, and I don't think that anyone actually disagrees that there are many people working hard in this lawsuit. I think their biggest concern is who are they actually working for? That's where the problem is. And those are the questions that aren't answered. And I don't know if Pat can answer them or if Porter can answer them. And I don't know if maybe this is the right venue to answer them, okay?
For Steve, I mean, or do you think there's a hidden agenda behind this to do something besides get Ron Paul the nomination and increase the liberty in this country? I mean, is there some evil agenda going on to turn us all into robots? Or I'm not trying to be silly here, but I mean, what is the concern? Are we a CIA front that's actually trying to give all the liberty people a great deal of heartburn by taking them to the altar and then leaving them there with, I don't understand the I mean, it's almost paranoia. I mean, it's a good question. I just don't understand what evil intent could be behind a lawsuit that we hope that we see is the only thing on the horizon to get Ron Paul the nomination. Again, what else is there?
Yeah, no, Pat, I think that you're misunderstanding me. I'm not even going to pretend to even know the answer to the statement that you just gave. The only reason that I bring this up is because I'm respected and trusted by a lot of people in the Ron Paul movement. And these are the questions that they come to me with. I'm trying to give you folks a better perspective so we can come to some type of final conclusion to start moving forward, because all these conference calls and radio shows in division is not helping further the goal in the movement. I'd like to try to put a quash to this thing so everybody can get back to work. That's my only purpose here. I'm not here to fight with anybody. I mean, Porter, you actually saw a post that I made today in the Lawyers for Ron Paul group. I expressed my concerns of how I felt in that post. And I wish that everybody could actually go read it, because this is the problem that we have. And, I like to quote Michael Badnarik, because we spend 98% of the time, or we agree on the issues typically 98% of the time. But we spend 98% of the time arguing with each other about the 2% that we disagree on. This is why nothing gets done. And if we're going to continue to fight with ourselves, we're not going to accomplish anything. I'm trying to get some unity here. That's my only purpose here, Pat and Porter, nothing else.
Steve, I agree with you. I agree with you. And one thing that I keep reminding myself and other people is that this is a spiritual movement. And if it is a spiritual movement, then that brings into play spiritual warfare. And so, as I've studied that, numerous tactics involved in that are hooking people's emotional problems that they have, which we all have. None of us grew up in the perfect home, so we have little hooks there. And you also have the dark side and the good side, and that's trying to screw up the dark side. So, everybody that has these concerns are all probably really, except for the agents. But most of these people that I know, that Tracy knows, these are good people. They've been giving their all in the movement. And I think we need to step up and take the broad view. I mean, we do have to act in a certain amount of unity here. And, should we have said it differently than taking over the campaign? I didn't write the headline. PR is one of my things. I like marketing. I probably would have done something different. So that probably wasn't the best way to make a good first impression with some people. But I understand it because we haven't, are we giving you orders? No. We're inviting people to become plaintiffs in a lawsuit, but the liberty movement still has to do just what it's done in all of the various states where they are. We've been using in our own group a little bit. We've been studying about this book called Tribal Leadership, and I've realized that so many of the good things that happened in Oklahoma is because we were operating at a very high level. And this is just a management, it's a leadership book, but I'm a sociologist among other talents, and it's a very good one. And that's how, we have to study how do decentralized organizations work. The spider and the starfish is another good one. The unstoppable power of leaderless organizations, yet we're all leaders. So how do we apply leadership and then work in unity and community at the same time? These are challenges we have to deal with, and these are normal growing pains. What makes our current situation a little bit dicey is we have a convention coming up in 2 months where, unless we pull a rabbit out of the hat, Mitt Romney is going to be a Republican nomination, and everything looks like to me that they want Romney to be the president next, but they could change their mind midstream. But so I think we're all feeling a little bit of angst and pressure about this coming up, and it's not the result we wanted last October and last November and December and throughout the primary season. And here we've been had, and so we're all wounded, we're all disillusioned, we're all hurt, and we're just trying to figure out what to do. And I understand legitimate concerns that people have. I really do. If somebody has a legitimate concern about, are we trying to steer this lawsuit in a way that's going to hurt the liberty movement, I can assure you from everything I've seen, no. And read the lawsuit. Take it to an attorney if you have real concerns about it. See what you think. We've had several people take the lawsuit to their attorneys, and they said, if I was going to be a delegate in Tampa, I'd be a plaintiff, because you do get that extra protection. So, this is the best plan we've come up with, and I didn't even come up with the plan of the lawsuit. But I tell you what, I decided in March we needed to declare our independence from the Ron Paul campaign leadership and the Campaign for Liberty. And I've been preaching that. There's people on this chat right now. I've seen several people from Oklahoma, and they can tell you, I've said quite often, we have to liberate the liberty movement from the Ron Paul campaign leadership and from the Campaign for Liberty. And just a convergence of events came together that Richard Gilbert and David Callahan found each other, first of all, and they found each other, I think, over the delegates in Arizona that were trying to figure out what to do because they got screwed so badly. Then they brought me into this, and I've been preaching the sabotage message since March, and lo and behold, here it is, front and center. And so we have these two issues, and I've seen some people that I'm sure are good friends with other people on this chat just swearing that Jesse Benton is the greatest thing since ice cream, and I'm thinking, I don't think so. How could a rational person look at it and think, either he's terribly incompetent or he's sold out? And I'd have to say he's sold out, especially with guys like Trygve Olsen. And who's this guy? I didn't even know he was on there. Talk about who else is on the campaign committee. Who had heard of Trygve Olsen before Kokesh and others started talking about him? I didn't
see, Porter, that's kind of the point. See, you bring up some valid points here, and this is where the grassroots are looking at it. they're asking the same questions about you folks. Well, who are you? What makes you more competent to do certain things? So I understand their concerns. I just wanted to make one quick comment, and then I'm going to go. I've been invited to be on a private conference call with several people of the group and exec committee people. I'm going to try and get some answers for some of you folks that you're looking for so we can hopefully come to a damn consensus and start getting back to work. Good, bad, or indifferent, I just want it done, period.
This is what I'm going to end with. You guys have spent 2 hours with me here, and there's still some more questions, but there's going to be time for those answers in the next coming days, I'm sure. I just want to say, being in this movement for so long, we need to really, get all this nonsense out of the way and focus on what the goal is. And the goal is to bring this damn country back to where it was back when the founders had the revolution and made the Constitution. And today was a setback with the healthcare. I mean, we have bigger fish to fry than fighting with each other. And it's really important that we really stop with the bickering between one another and stop with all the pointing fingers and all just be adults and work together and do what we're all doing in our hearts, is moving this country back to liberty and taking our freedoms back. And, Ron Paul was a great messenger, but he's not the message. And if something happens and he doesn't win, we still have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're going to need each other to accomplish that work. So I just want to end with that and just say, you guys have all my support. Thanks for taking so much time. Everyone's got strong opinions because we're all so damn smart. And that's what makes it wonderful on top of it. So thank you guys so much for everything. And I'm going over to the Tribune. If you guys want to go over there, you're more than welcome. RonPaulTribune.com. You guys can chat over there, get up on camera, voice your opinions. Next week I have the Board of Paul Festival. So we're going to be sitting up here talking about that unifying event that's going to bring us all together down in Tampa right before the Republican National Convention. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome, Tracy. Thanks for hosting this, and thanks for providing a logical format. And thanks for working on us with this issue. We really appreciate it.
No, I'm not even a delegate, but that doesn't mean that I don't care about liberty just as much as anyone else who's in here. I would have been a delegate if New York had won, because I was a campaign-picked delegate, so I have that behind me. But I thank you guys, really.
Coercion or intimidation?
What?
Did you experience any coercion, fraud, or intimidation, or dirty tricks?
I experienced nobody showing up at the polls to vote is what I experienced. So that's pretty much what I did. Thanks, guys, so much. I love you all. And like I said, going over to Ron Paul Tribune, thank you so much for being here, guys.
Hey, thanks, Tracy.
Bye.
Bye.